Hi, guys. Welcome to this evening's special live stream. It is Wednesday evening. I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. It is 6 o'clock my time. I just got done swimming. And unfortunately, today we didn't get a chance to do a video. We're going to put up an interview today and we had to reschedule. So I wanted to make sure I'm still putting out content every single day, Monday through Friday, in the live streams like I typically do. So wanted to throw up a live stream in lieu of the video to make sure I was able to put up some content today. So let's dive into some questions before we get there. I'd encourage everyone to check out my new YouTube channel, Rebel Capitalist. it's where I go on like 2 to 3 times per day. Whenever I see something that's interesting in the news, usually recent, typically that day, but I kind of comment on it. And most of the news applies to kind of the community's worldview and how we see asset bubbles and central banks and negative interest rates and personal liberty and kind of Austrian economics and investment advice, maybe not advice, I shouldn't say it, investment ideas. Don't want to get me in trouble with YouTube. So check that out. I'm not sure if the page is listed yet. Let me see if I can put a link in the description. Oh, I'm on my other page. Let me shoot over to the Rebel Capitalist. Okay, so bear with me 2 seconds here, guys. Sorry about this. There we go. Okay, so there is the link. And I will put it right here in the chat. Boom. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and dive into the questions. What do we got here? First, what happens to stocks, precious metals in a world where moderate Democrats refuse to vote for more stimmy? Oh, there's no way that's going to happen. Kevin, I'm not going to say no way. We live in a world of probabilities. We live in a world of gray area. But boy, I would be shocked if that happened. But let me keep going here. Where moderate Democrats refuse to vote for more stimmies and fiscal spending to prevent reflation. Yellen and Powell have their own money in bank and stocks. Why? Well, Kevin, I think you're saying two different things there. I mean, if you look at Janet Yellen, an extremely dove Fed chair, and now she's in charge of the Treasury, and you think about what you'd need to do to institute MMT, it's where you're combining the balance sheet of the Fed and the Treasury. They're basically one. And so if you wanted to combine those two balance sheets, I mean, who would you hire as the head of the Treasury? Janet Yellen. It was a perfect fit. So when you look at how dependent our economy is on stimulus and fiscal deficit spending now, and the Fed monetizing the debt, I just think the probability is incredibly low that we won't see any more stimmy checks or fiscal spending just because of we get some sort of sanity with the moderate Democrats and they refuse to vote for it. I don't see that happening, my friend. Maybe if we don't listen, if they do vote for that way, or we get gridlock or something to where it doesn't pan out and they're not able to do MMT, they don't do UBI, they don't do stimulus checks, they don't do more government deficit spending, fiscal spending. Oh, you're talking about a complete collapse in the economy. So what does that look like? A complete collapse. That would look like, in my opinion, it'd look like 1930s, but worse. It'd be like, oh my goodness gracious, you're looking at 20, 25%, 30% unemployment rate. it could be an inflationary depression, though. Well, not if they're not printing. If they weren't printing, it would be a deflationary depression. I mean, I don't know if consumer prices would go down that much. They might even still go up slightly. But you're talking about an asset price deflation, like like I don't know if we've ever seen before. I mean, stocks down 50, 60%, housing down 50, 60%. You're talking about GDP down, oof, boy, who knows, 20, 30%. I mean, that gets real ugly. So that's why I don't know if they'd refuse to do that. I just think that long term, 5 years, 10 years out, that the release valve is going to be the dollar. It's the easy way out for the politicians, not so much for the average Joe, not so much for us, but for the politician, it's the path of least resistance. And I think that's what they're always going to take. Any thoughts on UK HSBC banks stopping currency to from crypto transactions as reported by Stansberry? I haven't heard about that. I mean, I don't know about that specifically. I just know HSBC is not a bank that I would trust. Goes back to the videos I was doing during the repo market. And one tangent I'd like to remind everyone is the custodian of the GLD is HSBC. So if you're buying the GLD, assuming you're going long gold, kinda, but you're kind of going long HSBC. At least you're going long their trustworthiness. And I don't know if I'd want to go long my trust in HSBC. I don't know if I'd want to bet on that. Do you think that our current credit scoring system will be replaced by a social credit scoring system, or a combination of both? Yeah. Let's see. I do think we'll see a combination of of both of them in certain circumstances. I'm not sure how they'd implement that social credit score. It might be based on how many tickets you have, DUI. It might not just be you've got to go to jail for 3 days. It might be some sort of social demerit that, it could be social media. It might be that, Jim, where if you say something wrong on social media, that you get a social demerit, and there's like a council, like a social demerit council, and they vote on, and it's probably, I'm going way off on a tangent here, but they'd probably just have some sort of algorithm for it. So it would be AI. So the AI bots just determine what it should be. And, but they kind of have that, like if you have a certain ticket, you get points. And if you get a certain amount of points, you lose your driver's license. So same type of thing. If you say something that you shouldn't say on Twitter and it's deemed inappropriate, they give you a certain amount of points. And if you get 10, well, then you might not get a loan. Or at least I think you'd probably pay a higher interest rate. Something like that. So I don't know how close we are, but I see that being a reality down the road at some point, especially because we are moving so we're just moving in a direction of more and more political correctness, and to where and also we're moving in a direction where the whole country is so divisive, and one group hates the other group, and we're all out to get each other. And it's this religion that I've been talking about a lot in our videos, that in American society, our emphasis on religion has decreased substantially over the past few decades. And you could say, well, that's good or bad. We're not here to debate that. But the bottom line is, if you have less religion, then you got to fill that void with something, because we as human beings, we have to have meaning in our life. It's just, there's no other way around it. So, I would argue that Christianity is a heck of a lot better than Republican or Democrat. But I guess that's not up for me to decide. That's up to each individual. But I think that if we keep going that direction, which I think we are, especially if Trump starts his own network, and that's actually, I'm working on a video for tomorrow, a whiteboard video on that. And I don't think too many people are thinking about it. It's not my idea. It's Dr. Pippa Malmgren's, excuse me. And she's on Macro Voices. I heard her discuss this there for the first time. And it just makes a lot of sense to me when you think about the Trump's personality, and you think about what's happening right now with, or what's happened consistently with CNN and his kind of battle with the media, his ego, what's happened with Twitter, and the fact that that type of individual, and they're usually guys, because I think there's just that very small percentage of guys that are just hardwired to just go, want more and more and more. Sometimes they just want more money. They want more power. It's just more. How much more? I don't know, just more. And they just never, ever quit. And we see it with like Warren Buffett. And I'm not saying Warren Buffett is just like Donald Trump, but I am saying that it's people like that they just continue to do what they're doing and continue to want more success or achieve more in life in whatever they're trying to do, and they just do it till you put them 6 feet under. They never ever stop until they just physically or mentally can't. And it's weird. It's a bizarre thing that just, and it's not all guys, and it's occasionally you can get a gal, but not like that. I've rarely seen a gal that at 90 years old, she's out there trying to make another $1 billion just to prove that she can. It's a weird hardwiring there. And I believe that Trump is like that. I'm not here to say I'm a fan or not a fan of Trump. I dislike all politicians equally, but I think he's got that hardwiring. I just don't see him, like Carl Icahn is another example of that. The guys just won't retire. Like, they just won't stop. And I just don't see Trump just saying, okay, I'm not president anymore. Well, I'll just go back to doing a TV show. Or I'll just go back to doing my real estate. I don't think so. Guys like Trump that get that taste of whatever it is they want, whether it's money, power, fame, they always want more. They never want to stay at the same level, or heaven forbid, go down a notch or do something that gives them less power than they had before, or less money or less fame. They always have to do something where they're achieving more. And the only thing, in my opinion, that you could do that would increase your power even more than being president of the United States is to control your own media company. So I'm going to kind of walk through that in a whiteboard video tomorrow. And I don't know how on earth I got off on that topic. Oh man. But yeah, I think the last question was Jim, which had absolutely nothing to do with what I was talking about. But yeah, I think that credit scoring system, we're going to unfortunately see something like that in the future. And oh yeah, that's what I was saying. With the Biden administration being in office and us moving closer, or becoming more and more politically correct as a society, I just see them doing something like that. And of course, it's going to be for your safety. It's got to be for your safety. It's going to be for your safety. It's going to be because this group has had all these problems in the past, and we have to protect this group, and we have to be a civilized society. And if you're not part of this, one thing that I heard my buddy Chris Irons with Quote the Raven podcast, he tweeted out the other day, and I think it's something we really need to start thinking about, is at what point will society deem those who believe in Austrian economics or libertarianism to be domestic terrorists? And I know it kind of sounds, yeah, George, you're going too far. But if you think about kind of the core belief system in Austrian economics, very small government, sound money, gold, independent thinking, kind of the rugged individual type thing. I mean, those are beliefs that are becoming less and less popular in the mainstream, to the point where if you're not if you're not all about the greater good, then you're on the other team. And therefore, by default, you're whatever label we put over that entire group, right? It's this crazy type of mindset where we're seeing people as groups instead of as individuals. We're devolving as a society. We need to see people as individuals, for heaven's sakes. But anyway, let me go on to some more questions. I could go off on that for a while. Question: I'm a young mechanical engineer in U.S. I'm working, have $23,000 in debt. How can fiance escape? Fiance and I, okay, got it. Escape U.S. quickest before. Well, I don't know that I don't know that I'd go that far. We'll just say before it hits the fan. I mean, I would just go ahead and set up a residency visa in Panama if you're that worried about it. I mean, first thing I do is get an RV, so you could go out to the mountains if it hit the fan to the point where you're talking about. But then I'd also just set up a residency visa in Panama. Very easy to do. In fact, I think Andrew just had a podcast about it. It was something to the effect of how getting a passport for Panama very easily. That's kind of fake news, but he talked about how getting a residency visa there to spend time like 5 years is actually quite easy. Setting up a bank account and I mean $5,000, something like. I don't know the exact specifics, so you have to look into it. But that's probably where I'd start. I'd set up a bank account there. I'd get the residency visa, so I could go there just whenever I wanted. I could drive down. You can go through Mexico. You can get to Panama by driving, and then I would get an RV and I would load it up with food. I'd get my 97 OBS F250 7.3 Power Stroke, and I'd put that in the driveway, and then I'd just keep educating myself and try to do the best with what I got. Will you be switching from posting content daily to LinkedIn daily to keep from getting flagged? I've got everything backed up on hard drives, everything. And a lot of the videos we put up on Vimeo, then host them on our website. I mean, all of these other places are getting taken down as well. Now, that said, I want to give credit where credit is due. And I know there's a lot of concern with what's going on with social media. I'm concerned as well. A lot of you know that let's call it this platform took down one of my videos the other day, and I appealed the process, or I appealed them taking down the video, and I won. They just sent me an email I believe it was yesterday, saying that I won the appeal, and they reinstated the video and they apologized. So I don't want to say we're out of the woods by any stretch, but I just want to make sure that we're being objective and that there's a counterbalance there. I think there's a lot of negative things going on with social media, but occasionally I think they can do the right thing by our definition. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't worry about it, but I guess what I'm saying is that I think for the time being, if you're just super careful, and I don't think we should be careful, but I think if you're super careful, you can still post on YouTube. That's what I'm doing, and I'm putting a lot of time and investing into it. But to your point, if you're not backing that up on a hard drive, man, I think you're playing with fire. And then from a marketing standpoint, it's all about your email list, all about your email list. In this online world where we live and or kind of operate, I should say, that's the only thing that you own. And that's why I'm always trying to drive people to the email list and set up what we call lead magnets. And that's like if I do a special video with Lynn for like 30 minutes and you got to give your email. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I'm just trying to build the email list to get as many people on there. So if you get deplatformed for whatever reason, that you still have those 20,000 people that you can contact and communicate with directly, and you can still produce content for them. You just post it on another place and you just send them the direct link, so it's hosted by other servers, and at least there you can continue to do what you're doing and continue to communicate with the community. So it's not an easy kind of silver bullet panacea, but that's what I'm doing. And I think in the future I'll have Sebastian move a lot of our content over to a certain platform. But right now it's like what do you do? They're all getting dinged. So. Yeah, so I get this question quite a bit. Do I agree with Michael Burry that there's a bubble in index funds? You should not invest in index funds. Well, see, the problem there is that the index funds are the stock market. So I don't think that Michael is saying that don't invest in an index fund because those are dangerous. I think what he's saying is because the index funds and the passive investment vehicles, they might have a lot less liquidity than you think. They're distorting the entire market. So I think a lot of people have this impression that they listen or they read what Michael is saying, and they think that, oh, okay, well, boy, I'm glad I read that. As long as I just don't invest in that index fund, I'll be fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and just find out what stocks were in that fund and just choose those. No. I mean, okay, you might have slightly less downside, but if you look at what he's actually saying and how the market operates and what guys like Chris Cole are saying and guys like Mike Green that really go into the dynamics of how passive funds work, you see that it distorts the entire market. And because of the index fund or passive fund bubble, there's nowhere to hide. It's not just the ETFs that are in the bubble. It's the ETFs are creating the bubble in the entire ecosystem of the stock market. So I've never read The Vampire Economy, so I don't know I can comment on that. I have a 30-acre farm with water off the grid. Should I borrow 200 grand to buy gold, silver? No. No. I wouldn't. And here's why I wouldn't. The only reason I would take out equity from real estate to buy something else is if whatever it is I purchased would pay me enough to own it to make the monthly mortgage payments. I would not. I think you're basically buying gold with a negative carry, or buying gold and silver with a negative carry. I don't like that. I don't like that, man. I don't like buying things where something has to happen in order for me to win. That's pretty much the simplest way I can put it. If I buy a rental property, let's go back to 2012. I would go in and just a typical property, I'd buy it for 50 grand. And by the way, these are homes in very good neighborhoods, great school district. I mean, back then they were giving them away. So I would buy a bank for 25 grand, or excuse me, I would buy a house for 25 grand, usually from the bank, sometimes at a tax foreclosure auction. And I would, these are basic, little ranch, maybe built in the 1970s, 1,200, 1,300 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, just very, very standard. And I would go in, I'd drop about 25 grand on fixing it up. So I'd be out of pocket, let's call it 75,000. And then I'd rent it out for $1,000 a month. So nothing has to happen in order for that investment to work out. In fact, back then, I just assumed that I would never, ever have appreciation. Never. Because I looked at the chart that I always use, and I saw that historically, home prices really just stayed consistent with inflation. So I thought that, well, if the home stays consistent with inflation, great, but it's not going to increase my purchasing power. If it does, it's just icing on the cake. But I saw the cash flow, and I'm like, okay, no brainer. I could just do that and get whatever it was, 12% net return on my money. And that's without even using leverage. And then you're not factoring in the fact that you can take out that equity in the form of a line of credit. You can term it out to a 30-year fixed. And I can do all these other things with that equity while I'm collecting the cash flow, or while I'm, forced the appreciation. See, that's another thing too. I would have $75,000 cash in, and when I got done with the remodel, the value of the property would be $100,000, $110,000, $115,000. So I'd instantly force, call it $25,000 of appreciation. So I'm making that's ROI, right? And see, let's point out another thing that I was doing. I'd be 75 cash in, the value of the property, let's say, would be 100, and then I could take a loan out, 75% LTV. See what I'm doing? So I take 75,000 out of my pocket, put it into a house, then I rent it out. So I got all this positive cash flow coming in. I go to the bank, I say, oh, I want a loan against my equity, and they give me my 75,000 back. Then I could just do it again. But my whole point is that nothing had to happen. I had to put in some work there, of course, but the market didn't have to do anything in order for that to work out. Like if you buy Bitcoin right now, and I like it as a speculation, I'm not knocking Bitcoin, or if you buy gold, for heaven's sakes, or if you buy shares of Tesla or something has to happen in order for that to work out. There has to be more buyers than sellers in the market. The price has to go up. But with what I was just telling you about, the price doesn't have to go up on that. The price, it can just stay the same. And I'm coming out smelling like roses. So the investment works from day one. Nothing has to happen that's outside of your control. You see, so if you're trying to borrow against the equity in your farm to buy gold and silver, you've got a negative carry on that, and something has to, where you have to come out of pocket every single month to pay that mortgage, and something has to happen in order for that to work out. Now, I'm not saying gold isn't going up. I think silver right now, by the way, is a solid speculation, as are the miners. But I just would not do that unless I was investing in something that was paying the mortgage, so I'm not out of pocket on that investment while I'm waiting for XYZ to come to fruition. How would you transition smoothly as possible from our current monetary system into a new one? Wow, Tim. I think we'd first have to define what the new monetary system looked like. Because you see what I'm saying? If we don't know what the new monetary system looks like, I don't know how we could figure out how to transition into it from our current system, which I have started to call the dollar network, because I'm really trying to encourage people to think of the global monetary system, or the dollar being the reserve currency, as a network. And there's the dollar network in my mind, and there's the Bitcoin network in my mind. And now there's also the digital yuan network that I think is going to be growing significantly in the decades to come as a result of the Belt and Road Initiative, which is the largest infrastructure project in the history of the planet Earth. And that's going to give a lot of strength to the digital yuan network, in my opinion. So you're going to have these competing networks. So we understand how the current dollar network functions. But are we transitioning into the Bitcoin network? Are we transitioning into... I think there's a high probability that we transitioned into a type of monetary network where the central bank played a bigger role in the creation of credit in the real economy, not just with corporations, but with consumers. So you're borrowing money directly from the Fed. You're getting your business loan directly from the Fed, your home loan, your car loan, or you see. And so I think we could have a monetary system where the commercial banks played a much smaller role, if any role at all. And so how would that transition work? I mean, now that I'm thinking it through, Tim, I think you're seeing the transition. How would it work? We're seeing how it would work, because the Fed is, they're monetizing the debt. So that means that the government is creating more currency units in the real economy. We'll look at M2 money supply. So when the government spends money now, they're not taking money out of the system and then spending the same money. They're spending newly created money that's being, these new checks that they're spending out, they're just being backed up by bank reserves that the Fed is printing out of thin air, because they're selling those treasuries pretty much going through the primary dealers, of course, but they're selling those treasuries directly to the Fed. So when the Fed monetizes the debt directly, that most likely increases M2 money supply the way it's currently measured, right? So my point there is, in the past, without the Fed monetizing the debt, the creation of new money supply would have been dependent upon the commercial banking system. But now, to a certain degree, it's not. And we've seen that play out in 2020. If you look at the Fed's balance sheet, if you look at a chart of how many treasuries they're buying, and if you look at a chart of M2 money supply. Also, we go back to March and we look at how many assets, let's call them, or how much corporate debt the Fed purchased. All that's going on to the Fed's balance sheet. Look at a chart of mortgage-backed securities as far as the Fed's balance sheet. They're all going, no, I shouldn't say they're all, but a lot of the mortgages that are being created right now, they just go straight from the bank right over to the sausage mill at Fannie and Freddie, and then they wind up right on the Fed's balance sheet. So I think that's how it transitions. It just, there's more and more and more equity, more debt, more everything going onto the Fed's balance sheet, to where the significance of the commercial banks gets less and less and less. And pretty soon we look around and we say, holy cow, the Fed's the only game in town. And then when we look at the euro dollar system, the swap lines, the repo market, everything that we've been talking about on this channel for the last year, it's all centrally planned right from the old Fed. You say, well, aren't they creating swap lines right now? Well, yeah, but think about how that works. They have to create a swap line with another central bank, and then the banking system, the commercial banks under that central bank have to take those dollars, and then they have to create additional dollar loans using being backed up with those dollars they're getting from the Fed. But they're not going to lend out any money to XYZ corporation that needs it because of the cerveza sickness, because they know that it's not about a liquidity problem, it's about a solvency problem. And the commercial banking system that's needed, again, the transfer mechanism to transfer or to utilize those dollar swap lines, they have a P&L and they have a balance sheet that they have to worry about. Therefore, those loans, they have to be paid back, or else the bank's going bust. Where if those dollar loans to XYZ corporation were coming directly from the Fed, there's no commercial banks in the way. And remember, the Fed's balance sheet is most likely infinite. They don't really care about being paid back. Then they can just transfer that newly created credit right to that XYZ corporation that needs it. You see, it's a direct line from the central bank to the entity. And now, is that where we end up? Is that the system that wins? I don't know. I don't know. But you can see us transitioning slowly into a system like that as we speak. If money is printed, if printed money goes to pay off debt, doesn't that money just get destroyed? No, because let me try to understand what you're saying here. So if money is, oh shoot, hold on here. If money is printed, doesn't if printed money goes to paying off debt, doesn't that money just get destroyed? Yeah, the money that's used to pay down debt, that is reducing the money supply, correct? But you have to look at it on net balance, Kevin. So if you're creating $10 trillion and $1 trillion of that goes to pay off debt, you still have an extra $9 trillion. So you got to look at, and then you have to ask yourself how much new credit is being created. There are a lot of cross currents there, that's for sure. But yes, any money that's used to pay off existing debt does reduce the money supply that's available to chase the same amount, or I should say goods and services in the real economy. And then Michael, oh, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. That's super sticker. That's nice of you. Is MMT code for debt-based economy? Not really. I mean, the dollar monetary network is what we have right now is code. It's not even code. It's code would mean it's kind of implicit. What we have now, it's not implicit at all. It's explicit. It is a debt-based monetary system, 100%. Our entire economy is built on three things. You guys know it. I say it all the time. Built on asset bubbles, debt, and confidence. So is it possible that the World Economic Forum knows that deflation is coming and they do everything to hype inflation expectations in order to rip off everyone fast, like the story with the Roth? Okay. I'm not sure, Vadim, but I have thought about the Cantillon effect in regards to not just those individuals at the World Economic Forum, but all of the political and all of the financial insiders. And there are no bigger insiders than Klaus, Bigglesworth, IMF, everyone at the World Economic Forum. They are the, I mean, you look up Cantillon effect in the dictionary and there's a picture of Klaus Schwab right there. I mean, that's what Davos is. It's just a gathering of everyone that's super close to the money printer. So and I'm not saying that this is his objective. I don't know the guy, but the bottom line is the more money that is printed by the central banks, in the way most people define that. I know it's not technically money printing because it's just increasing their bank reserves, but the more government spending, especially that's being monetized by the debt, the richer that's making people that are closest to the politicians that are pulling the purse strings. And so and you have to recognize that if you're in that position. So I don't know. I mean, that's definitely an incentive. Now, are these people so morally upright that they're not influenced by those incentives? I'll let you be the judge. But I think that those incentives are pretty darn powerful, especially for people that like to be in a position of power and around other powerful people. And my point is inflation, more currency creation benefits them. So if they were out for themselves, then they would want to encourage policies which would create additional money supply, which would include, by the way, destroying the economy. Because the more the economy is destroyed, the more money that will be printed, if history tells us anything, and the more that would enrich those who are political and financial insiders. If companies go into lockdown and are destroyed worthless, would you rather sell the stocks and then what to do with the money? Hmm. Not understanding. I don't know if I understand that question. If the companies go into lockdown and are destroyed, they're worthless. Would you rather sell the stocks? I mean, if they're worthless, your stocks are going to be worthless. I don't know if you're talking about selling the stocks now. I mean, what we're doing in Rebel Capitalist Pro is we're really focused on commodity producers right now, and they've had quite a run. But if you buy a real strong commodity producer with a great balance sheet, I mean, they're not gonna go bust most likely. So I'm not sure I understand that question. I think you just got to figure out where you put the money. I mean, if you've got money in a company that you think would go bust in a lockdown, it's probably not a good idea to have your money there. You got to ask yourself about the risk reward on that one. That's a good question. If you're a president, would you make, well, not that you could, because I don't think the president has the power to do this, but if you were like, if you were a dictator, would you make a gradual transition to a small government, or would you rip the Band-Aid? I I would probably layer it. I would say, okay, if the government is this size right now, and I want it to be 10% of what it is right now, I doubt that I would say, okay, let's cut out 90% tomorrow. I don't know. I don't know that that would be the smartest thing to do. I would probably say, okay, I want to cut out 20% this year, 20% the next year, kind of go that route. So the economy and the people who you're firing, and all of the vendors that have been living off of the government, that they can transition into different things, and also that you're telling the market what's coming, right? If you just say, oh, bam, here it is today, and it just shocks everyone, they can't prepare for it, then I think it's going to be a lot worse than if you say, hey, this is what's happening, this is our 5-year plan, make sure you prepare for it now. And then you just 20%, until you get down to where you need to be. That's probably how I'd go about it. So I think I've pretty much discussed the pros and cons. I mean, the pro, was just ripping off the Band-Aid. The pro to ripping off the Band-Aid is that it gets done, that you don't have to worry about it. Because if you cut government tomorrow by 90%, you don't have to worry about government being cut by 90% because you just did it and it's in the past. Where if you did it in layers, like I was talking about earlier, sure, the first 20% might get done, but what happens if you get hit by a bus or something like that? You just don't know. You can't completely predict the future. So that would be the pro. But the con is what I just talked about. I mean, that would be a shock to the economic system that we have that would probably be unnecessary. I think that, and I'd really like to hear like Schiff's opinion on this, or Dr. Ron Paul, or maybe Tom Woods, or Bob Murphy, and because I'm sure they've probably thought about this, but I think that I'm guessing that they would agree that ideally you'd want to take that layered approach. Yeah. Do you believe that emerging markets with good commodities like Brazil, could be a good opportunity for the upcoming depression. Yeah, and keep in mind, we can have an inflationary depression. That's what so many people forget. They just equate a depression with deflation. It doesn't have to be that way. It can be an inflationary depression as well, which I think is probably more likely. But I also like places like Brazil because they're incentivized to give Klaus and Bigglesworth the middle finger, if you know what I mean. That whole Great Reset agenda, that doesn't play well for countries like Russia, like Brazil, like the Middle East. So it's very unlikely that they go along with that plan. And if they don't go along with that plan, if you think that plan is negative for economic output, that means capital flight goes out of those economies and then into where it is treated better. And if it's being treated better in Brazil and Russia and Saudi Arabia, and I know it sounds crazy right now, people say, oh, George, you don't know what you're talking about. That'll never happen. All right, maybe it won't. But the one consistent that we have in the world is change. If we look back 10 years ago and you look at where we are today, everyone would say, oh, there's no chance. In fact, with what we're dealing with or what we dealt with in 2020 and now in 21, if you would have said that this was going to play out in 2019, everyone would have told you that you're absolutely out of your mind. But look at the world, look at negative interest rates. People would have told you that would never, ever, ever happen. Look at what Singapore looked like back in the 1980s. Look what Germany looked like, for heaven's sakes. There was a wall in Germany in the 1980s. It wasn't that long ago. And so, I mean, is Russia going to be a bastion of free market capitalism tomorrow? Probably not. But in 20 years, in 15 years, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, and you've got to look at not just where countries are today, but where they're headed. You've got to look at the narrative and the culture within the country and what they're doing, not just with their words, but with their actions. And Saudi Arabia, as an example, just came out with a program to extend citizenship to certain people under certain conditions. They've never had that before. That's a big deal, and it's not easy to get a passport. Or I'm sorry, maybe it was the UAE. It was either the UAE or Saudi Arabia. One of those areas in the Middle East did this for the first time. That's a big deal, and I would never argue that country in its current state has more, let's say, freedom than someplace in the West. But you see it going in the right direction. Where here in the West, especially in the United States, if you're an advocate for personal liberty and free market capitalism, you see it going in the wrong direction. Okay, so we got about 7 minutes left, guys. I'll take a few more questions. I think I'm down at the bottom, or actually, let me go to the bottom of the comments. Okay, question. What is the smartest financial advice you could give someone? Smartest financial advice I could give someone. Okay. You're going to want to read a couple books. You're going to want to read Beat the Dealer so you understand probabilities. You're going to want to read Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. You're going to want to read the Market Wizards books so you understand how the pros, the OGs, think. You're going to want to read The Intelligent Investor so you understand value investing. Once you do that, you're going to want to understand how bad the economy has to be in order to need zero interest rates. And then you've got to think through the fact that the United States economy has needed 0% interest rates for the majority of the last 12 years. Then you have to look at the current state of the deficit, where just this year alone, the United States tacked on another, we'll call it 5 trillion, which is the same amount that they accumulated between 1776 and 1796. So you've got to say, okay, well, that was 220 years. We accumulated 5 trillion in debt, and we accumulated that same amount this year. So what does that mean? What does that mean for the underlying economy? What does it mean that we spent in excess of our budget? So $5 trillion deficit, but yet GDP in the United States was still down. That means that, so the reason I'm saying this is because that person would start to understand how this economy that we have is so fragile, and how it's built on those 3 pillars I always talk about: assets, debt, and confidence. And then if you start to understand zero interest rates, if you start to understand that the Fed is stuck, they can't come off the zero lower bound because it will completely crush the economy. And that will tell you how sick the underlying fundamentals and how sick the economy is, and how bad the underlying fundamentals are. And then once you layer that on top of your basic knowledge of how to think about investing, you'll start to see the landscape much clearer. And then once you do that, I'd layer on podcasts like Macro Voices, Real Vision. I'd listen to Schiff. I guess you could throw mine in there. And I think if you could compress all of that learning into and you just did that for even 3 or 4 months, your level of knowledge would be so much greater than it was just 2 or 3 months ago. And it'd be like having a sixth sense where you see the news and you see what's happening, and you see all the financial numbers, you see CNBC, and you're like, okay, bam, got it. And you're just plugging everything in to the Rubik's Cube and just solving it just like in real time. And that's probably the advice I'd give to someone. So, okay, so one more question here. Can you comment on real estate investing in Colombia? Oh, where'd the question go? I'm located in Bogota, but I know you've invested in Medellin. I've done a lot of investing in Medellin. I don't like Bogota as much as Medellin. If you look at a price per square meter, I mean, you probably know this. If you look at a price per square meter, it's cheaper in Medellin. I know the market a lot better. I've got an infrastructure there as far as my architect, my designer, all my subs, they're really Joaquin's, but all the subs that he uses, we've kissed all the frogs over the past 5 years. So now we've built up a team that's rock solid, and you want to try to leverage that team as much as you possibly can. So that's the main reason I stay in Medellin, is because I got a huge edge. And then I know the local market there like the back of my hand. So I know how to make a lot of money on the buy side, because I'm buying $1 for 50 cents. I'm not buying $1 for $3, hoping it goes to $5. So, and then just on a price per square meter, it's cheaper, as you know. And Bogota and Cartagena, I'm not saying they're overpriced, but they're a lot more expensive than Medellin. And I think Medellin, quite frankly, has more upside with the real estate than Bogota. Although I really wouldn't, that's icing on the cake. For me, real estate just goes up with the rate of inflation. You don't really make money on the appreciation. You make money by forcing appreciation, and then on the cash flow, and potentially on the debt, if you're a pro and you know what you're doing. Okay, so we're going to call it a night on that one. I'm going to do some shout outs. Oh, Moody the Millennial is here. Huh, holy cow. You guys probably can't, or yeah, you can. You guys can see the chat stream. Someone put their name is Moody Millennial, but then they put Moody's picture in there as their profile picture. Oh, that's great. Moody, good to see you. Thanks for hanging out with us on tonight's live stream. So first shout out to Moody the Millennial, then Citizen of Symphonia, Joe G's Craft Cannabis Guides. Thanks for hanging out again, my friend. Always on these live streams. Sid Prothy, T Mac, Terry Willman, The Intelligent CPA, Jan Willem Timmers, MP, Terry. Oh, I said Terry. Whoa, it skipped on me. So Eagle, All-Nighter Heater, Alex Z, the Libertarian. Who cares? Anthony, my buddy, is here. Deal Donkey on Twitter is also here. Clayton Bigsby, Hey Shady, Kim M, always in the house. Thanks for hanging out, Kim. Johnny Bravo, Wearing Viewpoint, Jim Wolf, Steve Z, Electro Spot, Robert Brooker, Ivana Esposito. Ivana, I think I see you on Instagram every once in a while. Dan LBC, Zabutify, member Rebel Capitalist Pro in the house. Craig K, Terry Bello, Chris Drake, Dominic. I'm going to guess Stape. I'm going to go out on a limb. Guess Stape. All right. Thanks for hanging out with me this evening, guys. And I will see you on the next video, which will be a whiteboard video tomorrow night on the Trump News Network. Stay tuned.